Right here with us is a guy who has sold 35 albums. Oh, wait, that's a typo. 35 million albums. And he is the toast of Broadway right now, starring in Sweeney Todd, which is this magnificent production, a very, very difficult show. It's so great, and we're so happy to have you here. Josh Groban.
Oh, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, a minute ago, Eric McCormick was here, your
yes.
Broadway colleague.
Who just came to see Sweeney Todd the other night.
Oh, he did?
Wonderful guy, yeah.
He brought me a whoopee cushion.
I see that.
What did you bring?
I brought the real thing.
Great.
Au naturel.
Yes.
No cushion necessary.
So tell us, Sweeney Todd, it's a notoriously difficult show to sing. And even maybe for you, although maybe not. I mean, of course it is.
It is. It's a challenge for sure.
And was this something that you had always wanted to do? Was this something that you had dreamed about? What is it, your favorite Sondheim show?
It was definitely one of the shows when I was younger. We all have those aha shows for those of us that got the bug when we were a kid. It was one of a handful of shows, and a lot of Sondheim shows did that for me, that made me want to tell stories and want to do theater for a living. I remember locking myself in my bedroom when I was 12, 13 years old and singing along to the Angela Lansbury and Len Cariou cast recording, as I did for other cast recordings, Sunday in the Park with George with Mandy Patinkin and Bernadette Peters, and the original Phantom soundtrack. And I just wanted to sink my teeth into these songs, but there was an enormous fork in the road for me in my life and in my career, and going and doing solo music and always looking at the theater landscape as something that if they would have me, would want to come back to at some point. It was a show that was almost so special to me, I never dared to dream about it, because I knew that in order for the stars to line up, for it to have another revival, to be the right age to do it, for it to be the right team and the right director, and to have a team that believed in me doing it as well, I was perfectly happy just continuing to love it my whole life and not ever actually take on the helm of the role, because it is, as you said, notoriously challenging. It is a really, really hard show on the voice, not just singing, but the yelling, the anger, the screaming. The training that I had growing up was all about purity of sound and not to do anything that might tarnish your, the perfect vocals. And so anytime you take on a role where screaming is a huge part of it, you just, got to be more careful.
Yeah, it's not a comedy. If you haven't seen it.
It actually has a lot of funny moments.
Well,
but
there's also a lot of anger.
There is a lot of anger, and a lot of that song that you just played, not to have any spoilers, but it's the incredible thing about this show and what Sondheim did is that he wrote some of the most beautiful romantic melodies while the most horrific things are happening on stage.
I remember talking to Annalee Ashford, your co-host who plays Mrs. Lovett,
who brings the comedy.
I mean, she is hilarious. The
Yes.
two of you together are it is my absolute favorite show this season. You're so incredible.
Thank you so much.
I know she knew Stephen Sondheim very well.
Yes.
Did you know him?
I did too. I was very lucky that he had been a part of my life and had been a friend before we were going to do this show. He gave us, his enthusiastic thumbs up to do this revival before he passed away. And we, of course, other than just huge grief and such an enormous loss to all of us who've loved him and loved his work, we now look to the page. We now try and get the answers as you would for Shakespeare or for the other greats. And to have been able to have that connection with him before he passed was one of the great honors of my life.
It was when I first heard you were doing it, I was like, Josh Groban, too young, too nice. And but I was completely bowled over when I saw you. And I think you do look 30 years older. I mean...
Yeah, well, I mean, I've definitely gotten way more gray hair since starting the role. So
I was going to say,
don't think I look young enough. Give me 2 months of previews, and I'll prove it to you. I'm actually older than Len Cariou was when he started.
Is that
on
right?
Broadway. Yeah, it's. I think sometimes fans just have a view of you from when the day that you started in the industry.
Right.
To them, they will never see anything other than sometimes the 19-year-old kid who just what am I doing here? But also I think to that point, I know that it was playing against some of that type, and I think that was part of the fun of diving into the role and diving into who Benjamin Barker would have been, because everybody knows the monster that became of him. You start the show by saying attend the tale of Sweeney Todd, but then you start to think about and talk about and sing about who Benjamin Barker was. He was a family man. He was a small business owner. This was not a murderous, rampaging lunatic when he starts the story. And this trauma happens to him, and under the right amount of pressure, how can somebody snap? And that was what was interesting for me.
What I'd never seen in a production, and again, I haven't seen every production that ever was, but I had never thought of Mrs. Lovett, who bakes the meat pies made from, Sweeney Todd's victims.
People.
Spoiler.
I know. For those who haven't seen it. But there's a real sexual chemistry between Sweeney and Mrs. Lovett in this one, and that was really fun to see, and had not seen that before.
That was something that Annalie and I really kind of chose to lean into early on, because, you think of these characters as older sometimes. You think of them as sometimes sexless, and that the dynamic, certainly the relationship that the two of them have to love is very different between the two of them. I think she actually loves him and has loved him for a very long time. To Sweeney, who has become quite sociopathic through the years of trauma and isolation and whatnot, views her as more of a transactional means to an end, and so it's a different kind of passion for an end goal for Sweeney. But between the two of them, there is this playfulness, and there is this ability that she has to get a smile on his face, to make him laugh in his deepest, darkest moments. And that's attractive. And there is, of course, I think, she sings about the rumpled sheets and, all that stuff. And I think that that's something that maybe isn't as leaned into in other productions, and we really wanted to make a meal out of that, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. What was your favorite song going into this? And I imagine now that you've been doing it, you have a different one.
My favorite, I could not wait to dive into Epiphany, which is the moment of mental collapse for Sweeney. It's the moment where any semblance of hope, any semblance of Benjamin Barker goes out the window, and that there is the monster begins. It doesn't think he's the monster. It's all about revenge and justice. But going into it, that song you just played, that Act 2 Johanna quartet is like butter. It is the smoothest, most beautiful song to sing, and also the counterparts that Sondheim wrote for what Antony is singing about Johanna, and Antony is singing about Johanna as a young, whippersnapper who just can't wait to kiss her, and Sweeney is singing about this long lost dream of family reunion that is now gone, but I'm okay. It's okay, and he's dispatching of his victims while he's singing it, and to Sweeney, it's this beautiful coldness and this comfort in detachment. And there are all these parts that are being sung at the same time, and I love it because it's also a lot for me to do with my hands while I'm singing it. There's a chair that's doing all these things, and my knife is doing all kinds of things, and there's just it's a real dance up there, that song, and it's a lot of fun.
We actually can we listen to a little Epiphany right now?
Oh, sure.
Wow.
It's full of joy.
What does that feel? Yeah, it's really full of joy. What does that feel like? What does that note feel like on stage?
Oh, it's like flying. Because you're building up all this tension, and then that final note is like such an amazing release of that tension, and it's such a wonderful open. It's always nice when an open vowel is written for a big high note. In musical theater, sometimes that's not the case. There are so many, waiting through it. There's so many big squeezed E vowels and stuff in musical theater. So it's nice to have a big open note to sing there. And also Natasha Katz's lighting design there. She did this change up on stage where all these kind of underlights are coming up from under, like when you tell a spooky story, at a campfire, and so she's got these shadows of me, on the back wall, and it's very spooky and very kind of larger than life, and so it's an absolute blast to sing that.
Your voice is insane. On Broadway, off Broadway, whatever.
It's insane.
It is. Even listening to that, hearing it live is like a gift. It is really. Do you ever miss a note?
Oh yeah, but I miss in ways that maybe the audience wouldn't perceive. I don't miss in a way that, I mean, there have been times in the course of 25 years where you go up front and go, whoop, that didn't happen, and you move on. It's like there's a lot of similarities between sports and singing, and just kind of like sometimes you don't catch the pass. Sometimes you just, you got to go for it. You train and you train and you train. And 99% of the time, you're going to do exactly what you train to do. And there's always going to be that 1% where whatever happens, your brain's just not there, your focus wasn't there. It's always the nights where you think that you've got everything taken care of, that you are feeling good in your dressing room, you're feeling great, you're like, it's the end of the week, I got this. The nights where you're like, I don't know if I can get through this, are always great because you're in it, you're focused, you're in the zone, and you surprise yourself all night. But, there are nights where I don't feel particularly great. You're doing this many shows a week. You're doing that kind of a song, that many shows in a week and in a month. You're going to have days where you walk into the theater going, all right, I got to find a way to get there. And that's where technique comes in.
The cast album is amazing.
It's big props to Alex Lackamore, our amazing music supervisor and director and producer of the cast album. When you open a show, you got to start recording that cast album pretty quickly after you open. And so you're dealing with Tech Week and preview audiences and press, and also you're recording a cast album on your days off, and you were just absolutely fried. It is boot camp. So now we actually have days off now, which is an amazing thing. But it was really important to all of us, and certainly to Alex, that we captured the luscious color of Jonathan Tunick's orchestrations on that 26-piece score orchestra. And Stephen Sondheim's, absolutely masterful work. There isn't a weak moment in it musically. There really isn't.
No, not at all. What do you do to both get into the headspace, because he's not a
he's not a happy guy. Yeah.
And also to get out of it.
It's a great question, because as somebody who both times that I've come into Broadway from being, in concert land, and kind of being able to emote through 4-minute chunks of something, and then you can chat with an audience and you kind of get in and out of it. Diving into a role is different, and so I really like to. I'm not one of those people that likes to kind of live in the character when I'm off stage. I wouldn't say that this is a role you want to be super method with, because it is dark, but that's where, if you do it enough in rehearsal, if you do it enough on stage, and you get the muscle memory of the emotion and the dynamic of it, there's a lot of trust involved, that if you allow yourself to be me off stage and enjoy the absolute joy and gratitude of being able to be in that theater, to be with this extraordinary cast, we have so much fun. The fact that I have to be so angry at Jamie Jackson, who plays Judge Turpin, we joke. I give him a big hug before every show. I'm not one of those people that has to be like angry at him off stage, so I'm angry with him on stage.
But I mean, you're really angry with him
I'm really angry. I am about an 11 out of 10.
Yeah, it's about as angry as you could get.
On
He's
stage.
Not a nice guy.
Deserved it.
Yeah, it's more afterwards though, because the domino effect of going through the whole arc of the show, coming off stage afterwards takes a minute. And the wonderful Michael Cerveris, who preceded me in the Broadway as a Broadway Sweeney Todd, he was kind enough to take me out for a whiskey and kind of talk to me about the role. I reached out to him before it was announced, and I wanted him to know first, because he was so brilliant in that. And then he said to me, you know what? I did the same thing with Len, and he took me out before it. So it's like this nice little passing of the Sweeney torches. And he gave me wonderful advice, which is to, wash it off with the makeup. When you go into your dressing room and you have your shower and you wash off the makeup, like mentally wash off the role with it, and trust that when you put the makeup back on, he'll be right there waiting for you, and go home without him. And that has been great advice, and it's been a hell of a lot of fun. It's better than therapy. It's great.
A lot of people know your origin story.
Sure.
And other people do not.
Yeah.
Like
It happened before the internet.
It did happen before the internet.
There's going to be a huge swath of people that have no idea.
Was there a world before then?
Was there? Did I exist?
You're 17 years old.
Yeah.
And what happened?
Oh my goodness. I just truly one of the most spectacular and terrifying things that's ever happened to me. I was in high school. I was just having voice lessons and getting ready to audition for Fame the Musical or Fiddler on the Roof or whatever it is we were doing. And I had met David Foster through a voice coach in Los Angeles, and never really expected anything to come of it. I sang at a charity event for David, for the governor of California. He calls me back a couple weeks later. He said, "Hey, I wrote this song called The Prayer. I'm at the Grammys. Andrea Bocelli, the great Andrea Bocelli, is supposed to be here with Celine, but he's stuck in Germany. He can't make it to the rehearsal. Would you mind stepping in and singing it with Celine until Andrea gets here?" I'm 16 and 3/4 years old.
Wow, you weren't even 17.
I don't think I was even 17
Wow.
at that point. And, or I had maybe just barely turned 17. And, at that point I was looking at like Sweeney Todd, Tevye, like I'm a baritone and Andrea is as tenor as it gets. And so it was a squeeze for me, for sure. I told him no because I didn't think I was the right person for the job. I did not have stars in my eyes. I didn't realize, both of my parents are not in the business. I had my eyes on theater, and I just thought to myself, well, it's very nice of him to ask me, but I don't want to look like a fool in front of the great Celine Dion. I'm not right for this. You should get a tenor. I hung up the phone, and my parents asked me, like, well, who was that? It was David. He asked me to come to the Grammys and sing with Celine Dion. There's no way I can do that. Me? And my mom kind of went, "Oh, you said no?" Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Well, David called me back, and he said, "Get your ass over here. 3:00. I don't think you heard me. I'll see you there, idiot." And he knew what I didn't, which is that this was, the most incredible thing. And I was scared, but Celine, who is just the purest heart, I mean, she held my hand when I was kind of shaking a little bit, and she kind of, in a duet, even if it's just a rehearsal, your duet partner can give you an energy that is we're together, or it can give you an energy that is I'm a solo artist and you're also doing it with me. And I have had both kinds of duets in my life. Celine, to a 16 and 3/4-year-old kid, gave me, during a rehearsal where we're in sweats, she did not have to. She didn't know me. We'd never met before. Gave me I might as well have been Andrea on that day. She gave me we're in this together. This is our song. This is our duet. Eye to eye, togetherness on that song. And that's what got me through that rehearsal. And it was a moment that changed the course of my life, to be able to then sing with her many times after, and to be able to sing the song with Andrea at the actual Grammys 10 years later to honor Luciano Pavarotti's death and after he died. It's just been, you never know sometimes what the door is going to be and when to decide to walk through it, but was very, very lucky that people believed in me that early, and I've tried to live up to it every day since.
Was there a moment when you were in that rehearsal when you saw Celine Dion? Because she had seen this kid walk in, and she thought, "Oh, this poor guy." And was there a moment when you
truly?
Was there a moment when you opened your mouth and you saw her go like, "What?"
I think I was too focused on the lyric sheet in my hand. I was too focused on like looking ahead. I'd never felt a spotlight that bright before, so I was purely in this weird kind of twilight zone of like, here we go. When I look back at the video, now of course being in the biz and being savvy, like I know that like filming a rehearsal like that is not okay. My dad had this little camcorder, which of course now I would say like, don't ever do that. But Renee, Celine's late great husband and manager, said it's okay. He can film. This is a big moment for Josh. He can film. Very soft spoken, sweet guy. And when I look back at that footage, I can now see when Celine looked at David, going like, "What the hell is what is going on here?"
I love that you have that.
I know,
because I can't imagine what she was thinking when that voice came out of that kid.
It was a really special moment, and she's somebody who's always been very, very special to me. And so we're sending her lots and lots of love if she's going through the things she's going through right now.
Absolutely. We've heard you do so many amazing duets. I mean, I'm kind of ride or die for Barbra Streisand,
Oh, yeah.
so obviously I love that too. Who are you just dying to duet with?
Oh, man.
And what song?
I've always had Bjork on my bucket list. I've as a teenager in the 90s, growing up with those albums and just her experimentation, and her voice is so wild and amazing, and that like Dancer in the Dark soundtrack where she sang with a full orchestra was like the first moment where I was like, oh, that's really, really cool. I'd love to blend voices with her. I've been chasing Yo-Yo Ma forever and ever and ever.
You just needed a COVID vaccine. He was playing all the time.
I would love to sing with Yo-Yo. The cello and a baritone voice together is like always a really, really nice thing, and that would be something really, really great. And there are so many incredible, just miraculously wonderful voices that are out there now that if I got the call, I'm sure I would be thrilled.
My favorite album of yours is Stages.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, there's every album has its moments. Josh.
That was a passion project for sure, though. That was
man.
That was back to my theater. I mean, I finally decided to kind of make the musical theater album. I put it on the shelf for a while because it meant so much to me. And I knew that I had taken a gamble to leave musical theater school. I was a grade school at Carnegie Mellon before I got my record deal. And so deciding kind of like, 8 albums later to finally do the musical theater album, I really wanted to get it right. And so it was an album that I was exceedingly proud of that then, I thought it was just going to be a passion project that a few people would be into. And it wound up, doing gangbusters. And then it was the catalyst for finally coming onto Broadway and doing Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. So I really credit that album with finally kind of bringing me to the family that I always needed to be in. And thank you.
I never really thought that much about this song. I was very familiar with it. I love it on this album. I also think your duet partner is inspired. And that's a little number from Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, yes. This classic.
It's so ridiculously lush.
It's so lush.
And Kelly Clarkson.
It's a dessert to sing that song. Kelly Clarkson, who is one of my dear friends and just has a voice, one of the most versatile and flawless voices I have ever met and admired in my life. On her talk show, she sings a new song every day, and it's just like there is nothing she can't do. I remember, and her being a big musical theater fan, which we bonded on right away. And I said to her, I'm thinking of doing this song from Phantom. As a kid, Phantom was one of my first shows. I really wanted to honor it on this album. And she goes, I love Phantom. I'm such a Phantom head. I really want to sing this. She sends me a demo in her phone of her and a piano. It's like, I don't know, like, what do you think, y'all? Like something like this? Like, is this okay? And she is belting her face off on this demo. And I dropped the phone. I was on tour and I was just like, damn it. Like, that's not fair. It's just not fair. Her voice is unreal. And I was so happy to sing that with her.
Josh Groban, thank you so much for being here.
Man, it's such a pleasure. Thank you.
Coming through the New York heat on a day when you have a show and coming
it's
to
my
talk to us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and for allowing me to talk about some stuff that means a lot to me.